Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Raptors Nation podcast. I am your host, Sean Davis, joined as always by my good friend, Luca Rosnao. Luca, it's a very busy time in the NBA season. We had our first trade today. It's Royal Rumble week, and the Raptors are rumbling and tumbling out of the ring. If that is a good enough wrestling analogy, I hope it was.
I like it. It combines the best of both worlds. But yeah, it's been a very bumpy road for the Raptors, to say the least. A lot has gone on since our last pod. This team has lost a couple of games that they should have won, and they've fallen to teams that were missing some of their key players. But luckily for the Raptors, one constant this season, despite their struggles, has been beating the Knicks. They beat the Knicks again on Sunday, and they take the season series 3-1. And here the Raptors now find themselves ready to go on that West Coast trip, that very, very intriguing West Coast trip that we've been talking about since December, I want to say. And a lot of things are in the works, it seems, behind the scenes. A lot of trade talk has come up. We got a trade rumor today that we're going to get into. So a lot of interesting stuff happening in Raptorland.
Yeah, so the Raptors right now sit 6 games under 500. Like Luca mentioned, we've been talking about this dreadful West Coast trip that spans starting Wednesday, so tomorrow, time of this being posted, Wednesday night against the Sacramento Kings, and it won't end until February 5th. So that's 7 game road trip in the span of about a little over than 10 days or so. That has also as back to back. It has 3 games in 4 days, Luca, to end this week at Golden State, at Portland, second half back to back, and then at Phoenix on 1 day's worth of rest. Luca, we talked about, like you mentioned, and we've been talking about how this West Coast trip heading into the Raptors are going to kind of have a good idea of where they want to move with this team. And Luca, where are you at right now with the Raptors? And we're going to talk a little bit more about some individual players. But what's your stance on this current Raptors team?
Yeah, so their West Coast trip is going to end a few days before the trade deadline, ironically enough. Sean, where I stand right now is I think the Raptors need to be sellers. I'm at the point where the Raptors have to build for the future. And I know it's a tough pill to swallow for many, but I feel like if they continue to play this game of seeing how things are going to play out and they kind of coast along here, and maybe they add a player at the deadline. I know Jakob Poeltl's name has come up, but a guy like Jakob Poeltl is not going to move the needle for this team. Even if the Raptors are able to add like a Jakob Poeltl and another shooter to this current Raptors team, it's like, what's the ceiling? Like, how far can this Raptors team go? And I don't see this Raptors team beating the likes of the Nets, the likes of the Sixers, the likes of the Bucks or the Celtics in a first-round playoff series. So it's like the Raptors can dig themselves out of this hole, get into the play-in, get into a playoff spot, but then you're going to wind up playing one of those 4 teams in the first round. So for a first-round exit, is it really worth it to go through this whole entire process again of getting your hopes up just to fall short? I really think this Raptors team needs a shakeup. And it's interesting because I was reading an article the other day by Josh Lundberg, Raptors beat reporter here in the Toronto area. And he said that when he asked teams how it's like to play against the Raptors, I think I have the quote here, but basically to paraphrase, team, actually it's right here, something just seems off about him, an opposing player who faced Toronto recently told TSN. And that tells me a lot. It's like teams are even seeing how non-connected the Raptors are and how different they are in terms of like how they're playing on the court, because like this is a Raptors team that used to strike fear in their opponents. This was a Raptors team that was always a tough team to beat. And now it's like the fancy, there's stuff going on, and the teams that they're playing against sees that something's going on. So I'm at the point where I think the Raptors, for as hard as it is, need to take a step back in order to move 2 steps forward. And they got to see what they could get for their big assets. They got to see what they could get for Fred VanVleet, because I don't think paying Fred VanVleet 30 to 35 million is in this franchise's best interest. I would even see what you could get potentially for Pascal Siakam. For as great as Siakam is, we've seen having Siakam and VanVleet as your quote unquote 2 best players, two highest paid players, pardon me, 2 All-Stars is not good enough to win in this Eastern Conference. So I'm all on the whole hype train. You see what you could get for your current assets. And I know we're going to get into this a little bit later, so I don't want to ruin the whole game, but you don't trade one or two guys, nudge, nudge, Scotty Barnes and OG, in my opinion, and you just see who you can get for the other guys and see if you can just build this thing around Scotty. I really think the Raptors need to build through the draft, and they got to go that route because, again, Sean, if you're going to play conservatively, try to make a move, and you're going to get a guy like Pirtle, like that's not going to move the needle. And this franchise is just going to be in the same position at the end of the season that they currently find themselves in now.
Yeah, and I like Jakob Poeltl a lot, but like Luca, you just said there, like moving the needle, I don't think it does that. I think he'd help. Really, I really do think he'd help. But I think his rim protection, I think his rebounding, I think his playmaking as a passer, and especially in like the offense in San Antonio where he gets those opportunities. So I think he'd be able to help the Raptors, but like help the Raptors do what? Like one of the other teams, and I don't want to start talking about this team a lot, but one of the other teams that Jakob has been linked to has been the Lakers. I think Jakob would help the Lakers a lot more because, like, you add Jakob to the Lakers, they are more likely to win a championship right now than whether you add Jakob to this Raptors team. And I think that's just what it is. And and so I agree with you on that. And I think I'm finally coming to the stance. Like, yeah, I think it's time you just sell. I think you don't trade Scotty Barnes. You probably don't trade OG Anunoby unless, again, not to spoil the game, but unless an OG, like I'd have to be floored for you to take OG off my hands. But I'm definitely not trading Scotty. So speaking of Scotty Barnes, let's get into one of our other topics. Scotty Barnes really starting to play well and shake off the sophomore rust, if you will. He's now averaging just under 16 points a game, 7 rebounds, and 4.8 assists. For the month of January, we're just near the end of it. He's averaging 19 points, a little under 19. I'm rounding up. 7 rebounds, 5 assists, a steal, and a block, a little bit more, obviously, for both of those per game. And he's shooting 50% from the field, getting to the line at an efficient rate as well. Luke, I think that's probably been like if you look throughout Scotty Barnes' season and look at like some of the trends, that's why I think kind of unlocking his game a little bit more. He's getting to the free throw line at a way more effective rate. A little bit more than 6 free throws a game, attempted a game in the month of January. The second highest for the rest of the season was December at 3.2. Luca, what's been the biggest difference in Scotty Barnes' game from your perspective?
Yeah, I think it's his aggressiveness. I think he's just playing with a lot more comfortability out there. And we saw that in that Minnesota game, which, by the way, was the worst loss of the season for the Raptors. And I think that was the game, Sean, where I took a step back and I'm like, okay, like I'm done. Like I'm over this thing. The Raptors ended up blowing a big lead. They lose to the Timberwolves, who have been a mess of their own without Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert. And this was after they lost to the Bucks, who didn't have Middleton or Giannis. And then just to kind of complete this whole thing, they lose on Saturday against the Celtics, who didn't have Tatum, and then Marcus Smart got hurt and missed the second half. So, yeah, last week was just a disaster of the Raptors losing to teams that were missing key players. But it was that Minnesota game in particular that really pissed me off, and I just saw a complete meltdown by the Raptors. But the one bright spot was Scotty Barnes. He was the only guy who was playing for every possession, getting after the loose ball, attacking the rim, showing me something when it looked like everybody else was dead. Guys like Siakam, and just, guys that you should count on in those moments kind of becoming a ghost. It was Scotty, the youngster, that was really doing everything in his power to preserve that victory. Obviously, that wasn't the case, but I think Scotty just going back to his roots, being comfortable, that has helped him in his game because I know his shooting has been tough for him. But that's something that he's going to have to just work on over the course of his career. But if Scotty can do some of the things that you touched on, Sean, on a consistent basis, that's what's going to make him a lot better. And I love when I see Scotty Barnes, the aggressor, and Scotty Barnes, the playmaker, and not Scotty Barnes that has no part in the offense. So, like I said this on Twitter a couple days ago, I believe this is Scotty's team now. I think Scotty Barnes is the focal point of your team. Now you got to go out, build around him, and going back to my whole sell analogy, you sell, you get as many good assets and picks as you can, and hey, we have one of the best drafts or intriguing drafts in a very long time. The top 5 is loaded with studs. So can you add to Scotty Barnes and create this new identity Raptors team? Because I think that was one of the biggest reasons for why this season didn't go to plan for the Raptors. I feel like they had 2 different timelines. You had a group of guys who are ready to win now, ready to win, compete for a championship now, but then you have a group of guys who are still young, raw, and they need some time to really hit their true ceiling, to really hit their true prime. And one of those guys being Scotty Barnes. So by the Raptors not trading Scotty Barnes for Kevin Durant, which is still, in my opinion, to this day, the right move, you almost put it out there that, okay, we're not ready to compete for a championship yet. Because if you were ready to compete for a championship, you would make that move to bring in KD with a Van Vliet and a Siakam. But by them deferring, you're basically saying, okay, Scotty Barnes is our future, so you got to build around him. And I think just contradicting timelines really throw off this team. So it's like, why don't you see what you could get for a Van Vliet? Why don't you see what you could get for Siakam? You give those guys an opportunity to win, to end their career, and you can build around Scotty. And obviously, you're high on him because you didn't trade him for KD. So I know I'm kind of giving you a long-winded answer here, but yeah, Scotty Barnes. It's nice to see him coming back to form. He didn't have a good game against the Knicks, but look, he's still a sophomore. He's going to have bad games here or there. It's not the end of the world. But overall, Scotty Barnes has really turned it on compared to the first part of the season.
Yeah, and I mean, even in like you said, he didn't have a good game against the Knicks. He still had 6 assists, 2 times. I think you might have been talking about the Boston game he didn't play as well. He's scoring wise, but I mean, he still had
Was it
six
the
assists.
Boston game? I know there was one game. It wasn't a good one. It was Boston or the Knicks.
Yeah, I think it was Boston. But still 5 assists. He doesn't turn the ball over that much. So yeah, Scotty, we build a team around him or whatever. And also, yeah, Raptors, if you want to tank or whatever, I don't want to say the word tank. If you want to like not be good for the rest of the year, but like sell, get extra draft picks, by all means, go ahead. That'll make the draft process a lot more fun for me, who's gonna be evaluating a lot of these prospects. So heck yeah, go right ahead. Don't I won't be mad at you. But I think the Raptors, I think you got to go guard. Because I think that's been, and we said this back in the freaking offseason, where I think the Raptors, they went wing. They're like the inverse Lakers. And we keep talking about the Lakers, but like the Lakers went guard heavy, like you need wings to win. Like the Raptors, like too much of something is a bad thing. And I think the Raptors have seen that, like, hey, yeah, we have a bunch of size, but we don't have like any guards, which you still need, that can, like, outside of Fred VanVleet and Fred. Now, granted, past 10 games, we talked about this a little bit off screen. He's been playing a lot better. But like Fred VanVleet, outside of that, has not been good this year. It's like, what other guard do you really have that can consistently create for himself? I personally consider Gary Trent Jr. more of a hybrid. He's more like an actual wing than he is more so a guard. So I think that is what you look for in this draft class. That has some really, really good guards. Like if you somehow, unless you get the number 1 pick, you go on Victor clearly. But like if you get the number 2 pick, that is so clearly Scoot Henderson.
Yeah.
Like you got to.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly. That's why, like, I'm not even a big fan of the whole Gary Trent Jr. for Jakob Poeltl. Again, like, what's Jakob Poeltl? Like, he's a great rim protector. He would give the Raptors a true big, but it's like, yeah, like I'd rather, if you are gonna sell Gary, I'd rather get a lot more assets than a guy who probably will give you a couple more wins this season, but won't make such a huge impact in terms of like the title chances.
Yeah. So, all right, let's talk about. We kind of actually just touched on Scotty Barnes's, updated play. Let's talk about this trade rumor. So, there's been a couple of rumors or whatever floating around out there that the Raptors and Spurs could be in 3-team trade talks that would trade Jakob Poeltl to San Antonio. Gary Trent Jr. likely to a third party because you want to talk about timelines. He does not fit the Spurs' timeline. Luca, what are your initial thoughts about this? So let's set the parameters up here. Poeltl to San Antonio, Gary Trent Jr. to Team X, and then likely just draft capital and some filler salary going out to San Antonio.
Yeah, I think based on the circumstances, I don't like it, Sean. If the Raptors were playing well. They were in the top 4, even 5, granted. And this team really showed me something, that they were a much better version than a season ago, and they were trending upwards in the right direction. I would be more inclined to bring in a guy like Pirtle if it was a matter of, okay, the Raptors are so close to being a potential spoiler in the East, but they just need to add a center. They just need to add another shooter. Okay, then you get aggressive. But because the Raptors have kind of fallen off this cliff, and there's a lot of internal issues that you've been reading about, and you can clearly see, and this team has been going through a lot of struggles. I don't think it's the right decision to make this move when there are bigger issues that you need to address. So again, it's going back to the big picture. I think big picture, this team's in a much better position to just be in a seller's position and see how much future assets they can get rather than guys who they can get now. So yeah, just based on the circumstances, the Raptors aren't close to that top 6 spot. I don't care about the play-in, neither does Masai Company. So this move doesn't really move me, and I think it compromises the whole grand plan of just trying to build around Scotty and trying to start this thing over correctly.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is and to your point, not to regurgitate what you just said, but this is okay, we're trading Gary, but we're trading Gary because we don't really want to pay him, and we're trading Gary to still try to be good this year and make a push. But that's just not where the Raptors are. You're trading Gary, and that's going to lead into our next topic. You're trading Gary to tear it down and be ready to rebuild it, because Scotty and a couple of guys are, there's maybe only 4 or 5 guys on this roster who I don't think you ever really consider trading. And we're about to get into that right now. So I agree from a Raptors standpoint, unless you're getting compensated as well via draft picks, which I doubt it, it doesn't really make sense to do any 3-team trade. I love Jakob Poeltl a lot, actually. Like I mentioned, it gives you a true big. And, I mean, that kind of solves the problem, but again, you just drafted Christian Coloco as well, who's has some decent flashes. So I'm in agreement with you, Luca. Pass.
Yeah, and a lot of people are not in favor of the pick. Just some of the stuff I've read on Twitter, and Jakob Poeltl is going to be an unrestricted free agent as well this summer. So that just kind of throws another
I
curveball.
forgot about that too. It's like, yeah, definitely. What are you making this trade for? You want him so bad, go pay for him.
But that's what I mean. And it just tells me it's just a lazy way to try to make a move in an attempt to save the season. But really, I don't think it'll do much in terms of saving it.
Yeah. All right. So let's play a game called Keep or Trade. I'm going to throw out a bunch of different names, and we're going to decide, hey, should the Raptors, or would we keep them or try to find a trade with them to realign the Raptors? So let's start off with a very easy one here. Scotty Barnes, like we've talked about the whole show, we're clearly keeping him, right, Luca?
Yeah, if you didn't trade Scotty Barnes for Kevin Durant, one of the best players in the world, he's not going anywhere. So, yeah, you're definitely keeping Scotty Barnes for the future.
OG Anunoby.
So this is one that has kind of like opposing opinions on it. Me personally, I'm very high on OG. I've been since he was drafted by the Raptors. I guess I got a sweet spot for him. And I think it was Jake Fisher of Yahoo Sports who said if the Raptors did make OG available, every team in the NBA would give the Raptors a call. That's how highly sought out he is, and rightfully so. He could do it on both ends. I would make OG Anunoby untouchable. I think he still fits the timeline where if you were to rebuild, he's only 25 years old. You could still get away with it. So, yeah, I would keep OG and Scotty. Those would be my untouchables.
I think I'm going to agree with you as well, because if you were going to trade him, I think it makes more sense to do it next year. And that's if, for whatever reason, you can't get an extension done this summer. He should be extension eligible this summer. He'll have one more year left of the contract, and then he has a player option, which he could decline. So, like, if for some reason, like, hey, you try to work it out an extension this offseason, it doesn't work. You head to next season, you're still trying to get some things done. You get the I'm trying to find the right word, the like hint or whatever. And I mean, I couldn't think. You get the hint that hey, I'm not re-signing. I'm going to decline my player option, and I'm going to take my business elsewhere. That's where you trade OG. Granted, you could make the argument, hey, you waited too long. hey, his value is probably at the highest right now, I am in agreement with you because I think the Raptors do want to keep OG around, and I would want to keep OG around for the long term. So, who cares? And again, like, even if you miss out on some of the value right now, you're telling me teams won't throw a decent bag at you next season around the trade deadline if he's available. Like, it's what all 29 teams aren't going to be interested still. You know what I'm saying? So, like, you're at least a year too early on trading OG, in my opinion. Not even talking about the player.
And he's such a coveted player, like a very good 3-and-D. Like, it's hard to get a player like OG, right? Like, these players don't just grow on trees. So once you
Right.
have him and you've groomed him throughout his entire career, it's like you might as well keep him at this point.
Yeah. So
Again, pretty raw still. I know 25 is not the youngest in the NBA, but it still kind of fits that rebuilding timeline.
All right, let's get into a couple of interesting ones here. Pascal Siakam.
Yeah, so this I kind of gave my answer away at the beginning. I would see what you could get for Siakam only because Siakam, you look at him right now, he's at the peak of his powers. He's 28 years old, like he's in his prime right now. And if the Raptors are looking to go young and kind of reset this whole thing, he doesn't fit that timeline. And Siakam's going to demand a ton of money. He's going to be eligible for super max. It's like, are the Raptors going to win a championship with Pascal Siakam as their highest paid player? Most likely not. I would see what you could get for Siakam, and he could help a lot of franchises get over the top and make them become a championship contender. So it'd be a win-win on both sides. The Raptors get a shit ton of picks back. They get like a very intriguing package. See if you could get like a Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell-esque package, which I think Masai Ujiri could definitely get that. And the Raptors get a boatload of future assets, and that team gets, a multi-time All-Star. Siakam's gonna make the All-Star team again, All NBAer, and a guy who could put one of those teams over the top. So I've seen rumors like Phoenix. I think Siakam on Phoenix would be huge, although I don't know what that trade will look like. But
It'd
my
have to
point is,
involve DeAndre Ayton. That's the only way that makes sense.
yeah, I think that's the only way that makes sense. But you put them on Phoenix. I mean, Phoenix, like their championship window, I know many people think it's closed, myself included, but like it's still technically open. So that's a team that's looking to win now. I think you see what you get for Siakam and you make him available.
Okay, so Luca, I'm not gonna lie to you. I had no clue what my answer was going to be until you spoke. Because I was definitely kind of leaning towards like, no, you bring them back. I think Scotty and Pascal can work. Your two building blocks, face of the franchise. I think I might still sit in that one, but you gave me a very compelling argument. And maybe it's just like my imagination isn't with like Pascal trades that great. But like if Phoenix calls me and like let me see what does Phoenix have? Like if Phoenix called me right now and said, "Hey Sean, we'll give you the Raptors, we'll give you DeAndre Ayton and there's nobody else. Like Cam Johnson and some picks. Like, do they have picks? What picks do we have?
Yeah, I don't know the whole Phoenix situation.
Okay, it's like DeAndre Ayton, Cam Johnson, and 3 first. Do you do that?
That's pretty compelling. The thing is, like, you got to ask yourselves from a Raptors perspective, like, are you going to win a championship as Siakam as like the number one guy, as your number one paid guy? No, I don't think so.
Right.
And we're seeing it now. Like, for as great as Siakam is, I look at him as a Robin to the Batman, and which is why he was the perfect player alongside Kawhi, and that perfect team that happened in 2019 that will forever live in my heart was so dominant because like it was such a great cast of players. Because Fred wasn't one of your main guys. Siakam was, like I said, a Robin more than a Batman. But because now like Siakam's had to play sort of like a Batman role, like he could have a great game, but we've seen it so many times towards the end of the game, he doesn't have that clutchness. He doesn't make that big shot, doesn't make that big play. Like take the Boston game, for example. And like, listen, a lot of teams know that like Siakam is a large part of the Raptors offense, so they can scheme against them very well. But it's like he literally just like ran into a wall that was Jaylen Brown on Saturday against the Celtics, and he poked the ball away, and then that was the game. So like Siakam can help a team like Phoenix because Devin Booker is the guy there. could you imagine Devin Booker, Chris Paul, and a Siakam big three? Like that's pretty good if you're a Suns fan. But yeah, like I think it doesn't have to be Phoenix. I think if the Raptors were able to get like a huge trade package for Siakam, you have to entertain it.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm in agreement with you. Although, and this isn't necessarily a diss to Pascal's abilities. I keep hearing Rudy Gobert trade package, and definitely Pascal's better than Rudy Gobert. I think you're probably gonna get closer to like a DeJounte Murray trade package. And I'm more so setting the expectations low. And then if you get like a Rudy Gobert trade package, by all means, heck
Yeah.
yeah. But like, well, I mean, what did DeJounte go for? 3 first? And I'm not gonna lie to you, I honestly forget the players that are involved in that deal. So
Yeah,
there,
I couldn't name it at the top of my head, but you know what? Like the trading, the trade machine, whatever you want to call it, like it's broken just because like those players got so like huge deals, and it's like yeah, you take a player like Siakam who's better than them, it's like what is he compelled to get, right? So it's like it's very tricky in terms of
yeah.
like what a player can truly get, especially with some of the ridiculous trades that went down this offseason.
Okay, maybe DeJounte Murray trade package was a little disrespectful because it was sorry, a first round pick swap and 3 first. So and one of the first being protected. So like there's like a middle ground between that and like the Rudy Gobert deal. Donovan Mitchell somewhere in there, like that's where he is. Like he's not quite the DeJounte Murray deal, probably a little bit more, but he's not the Rudy Gobert package. And I think you could get that from somebody. So yeah, that is fair. I'm in the middle. I cheat. I cheated. It's my game, so I could cheat.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Siakam's better than Gobert, better than Murray. Do you think he's better than Mitchell?
No,
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I think Mitchell. Yeah, I'm putting Mitchell over Siakam for sure.
especially the way Mitchell's playing. He's
Yeah,
on a tear.
yeah,
So all right. I would say Gary Trent Jr., but I think that's. Well, actually, yeah, Gary Trent Jr. Where are we at?
yeah. It's so interesting, right? Like I don't even know. Like I'm kind of back and forth with Gary Trent Jr. because like he has these stretches where he plays so well, and he's got such a good so many good skills, and he's come up big for this Raptors team at times. He's only 24 years old, so he still does fit that timeline. But it's going to come down to like how much money is he going to demand and if he's worth that money. So I would actually probably lean towards seeing what you could get for Gary Trent Jr. And you know what? I'm just going based on what the rumors are telling me. And they're saying if the Raptors are going to make a trade, in all likelihood, it would be Gary Trent Jr., followed by, I think the second name was Van Vliet. And we'll get to Van Vliet in a minute. But yeah, Gary Trent Jr., just based on like what I'm reading and the situation, him eligible for a contract, all that, like I think you trade him. It makes sense. And you see how much you could get from him. Because he will be highly sought out for sure. Like he's a really good young talent.
Yeah, I think he's another player where maybe not all other 29, because I do think there are some teams that not even like don't want Gary, they more so don't need Gary. 22 out of the other 29 teams would pick up the phone and call. So,
I mean,
like,
your Lakers are probably going to give the Raptors a call. He would make sense on the Lakers. I don't know what the Lakers would give back, but like I've seen that rumor now from last year and it's coming up again this year. So that would
yeah,
make sense for LA.
yeah. So, um, like, I think I would do. I'm not forcing anything with Gary, so I'm in agreement with you on this. You're not trading Scotty. You're not trading OG. I wouldn't force anything with Gary. Like, if you can get one for sure unprotected and a couple like protected, or like 2 unprotected and some decent stuff in return player wise from a Raptor standpoint, then I probably do. I've seen like some mocks or whatever, some trade machines like where the Raptors get 1 first round pick and some rotation players, and like this for like Laker fans. This is about the Lakers, like Pat Bev and Lonnie Walker and a first for Gary Trent Jr. If I'm Masai Ujiri, I am hanging up the phone and blocking Rob Pelinka's number. No way. And it's not even like
Pat Bev.
this year first round pick. I think that's what it comes down to when we talk about compensation. I probably want a first round pick for this year, and then
Yeah.
if you can add in like a later first round pick, that's fine. Because like this year's draft, we know for certain like this is going to be another incredibly deep draft class. And not saying that maybe in 2027 it won't be, but like, I mean, what if like just think from a GM standpoint, and I don't think Rob, not I said Rob, I don't think Messiah would ever get fired, but it's a business. So like from Messiah's standpoint, he could think like, hey, who says I'm here in 2027? Why would I care about a 2027 first round pick? Give me a pick this year so I can
Yeah.
go do something with it. So like, yeah. So Gary Trent Jr., I want to pick for this year for sure, and then maybe another future first and a player or two, whatever. But Gary, I would be patient. I'm not forcing anything. You have team control for sure for next year, I believe. Or does he have a player option this year? What is it? Where are we at? Gary
Sorry.
Trent Jr. contract. The player option this summer.
Yeah.
So maybe it becomes a little bit different. Okay, let me read. All right, final answer. You test the waters with Gary. Like, hey, we like you a lot. Yada yada. What do you want to do, or what are your plans with your player option? Do you plan on picking it up and we, try to, get a contract extension working this summer, or do you plan declining it and testing the waters? And hopefully he's upfront and honest about it, and he says, you know what, Masai, I'm thinking about declining my player option and testing the waters. Cool, trade him, right? Keep it in house. The Raptors do a good job with those kind of things, keeping that kind of stuff in house. And if he says that, hey, I'm gonna pick it up and we're gonna, work out something this summer, hopefully, and if not, we'll see. Then I'd probably keep him. So my answer for Gary depends on what he wants to do with that player option, or what indication he gives you about that player option.
Yeah.
A very long-winded answer. I probably could have.
And I guess the last guy is Fred.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you see what you could get for Fred, like for sure. Like he's the number one. I would say he's like even ahead of Gary to see if you can trade, and like you need to trade because like you're not like I read an article like people project Fred to get between 30 and 35 million, 30 to 35 million. I'm not paying Fred anywhere near that. Like I'm not paying Fred 30 to 35
From
million.
who?
Like, are you like so? Yeah, there's a Yahoo Sports article by Jake Fisher, and he says that like league figures like project Fred to get in between that range, and like you're not gonna win a championship when Fred's your second highest paid player. So yeah, like I'm out on Fred entirely. Like I think it's time the Raptors just kind of ship him off, see what you can get. Orlando's interested. I think Phoenix is interested too. They were before they got Chris Paul a couple years ago. So
I'm just like befuddled right now. Like, who is paying Fred VanVleet $35 million?
Orlando,
Like, but
that's the
like,
only team. That's the only team I can see
you're
doing it,
getting
like a bad team. And like Orlando's probably like as good as the Raptors now, but like a team like that, like really taking a chance on Fred because they got a whole lot of like young talent.
but still, like, you have Suggs,
Yeah,
you have Cole Anthony, like down, you have Markel Fultz, who been healthy recently in Orlando's been fine. Like, honestly, the first like Washington makes some sense actually. Like, if you want to like redo, I don't know how they would get the money, but if you want to like redo the Bradley Beal, John Wall thing, not quite John Wall, but like the backcourt, you have Kuz and KP again. Do not enter. I don't know where they get the $35 million to make this deal happen, but like, yeah, because hold on, they actually might be able to. Hold on, let's see. I'm gonna see if I can share my screen because this might work. They got the cap, or like they don't have the cap. They have the tradable contracts, which honestly, at times, is more important for the podcast viewers and our listeners. I do apologize, but all right, this is what we have here. We got Raptors, Wizards. it has to be like Will Barton, Monte. Oh, wait, Will Barton and Monte Morris. That gets in terms of salary. Because, yeah, he's only at 21. What do they have picks wise? Oh, wow. Yeah. They're literally the Lakers. So, like
That one.
27 and 29. Luke, are you doing this deal?
I can't even see. What does it say?
What'd you say?
I can't even see. What does it say? Will Barton, Monte Morris, and two. No, those are too far out. I thought the whole Raptors game plan were getting some picks early on. I don't think though. And why would the Wizards? The Wizards don't make sense to me. Are they kind of like? I don't know what the Wizards are doing. If they're even like competing or blowing it up with Beal over there, but
Less. Yeah, Luke, I guess that's just like more or less the point or whatever. Like, I don't know who trades for, like, when you bring up some, like, the Suns, I think the Suns and the Raptors might just be like made a match made in heaven in terms of a trade, whether you look at Siakam or Fred VanVleet. But like if it's Fred VanVleet, you're getting Chris Paul back. You're taking on that contract. So I don't think there's a realistic option for Fred VanVleet. And really it's because I look at all the teams in the NBA. I'm not saying every single team has a better point guard than Fred VanVleet. Heck, I think Fred VanVleet is maybe better than Chris Paul right now. Don't know if that's not a take. But like,
I'd rather stop your call.
but like, okay, sure. But like, if you're the Raptors, do you want Chris Paul on this team over Fred VanVleet? Or like, if you're Orlando, right? Does it make sense timeline wise for this season to go get Fred VanVleet? And then you look at some of these other teams like Detroit doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, I'm just gonna start running down the table. None of the Western Conference teams make any sense, especially in the top six. Dallas actually maybe, but shrug. Utah makes no sense. Yeah, Utah doesn't really make that much sense. Minnesota, you would probably take back D'Lo, so no. Golden State, obviously no. No to OKC. The Lakers have nothing to offer. No to Portland. No to San Antonio, and no to Houston. Right? So, and we could go through these teams too, honestly, but I'd rather not. So, like, that's my biggest thing with the Fred VanVleet trade. While the other guys, OG, even Gary and Pascal Luca, there's more easily like trades could be found. I think you like have two options with Fred VanVleet, and maybe again, I'm not that imaginative with NBA trades, but I think you keep Fred more so because I don't think you'll be able to find a trade for him that makes sense value wise and team wise.
Yeah, I think Masai could become creative. So yeah, basically we went through it all, but just to recap, I'm putting everybody on the market except for Scotty and OG.
Yeah, and I'm putting everybody on the market except for Scotty and OG and Gary Trent, depending on what his contract, what he wants to do this summer. So there we go. All right, this was a longer edition of the pod, but a fun edition of the pod. Thank you guys so much. Luca, thank you for hopping on as always, bro.
Yeah, it was awesome, man. We'll see how the Raptors fare on this West Coast trip.
Yep, we'll be back later on this week. Happy Royal Rumble if we don't see you before then. Hopefully we do. And until next time, guys, stay safe and see ya.